Hey class, welcome to class 4, explaining charts and graphs. If you haven't already, make sure you have downloaded or printed this week's paper handout. Okay, so we're going to be covering the materials together. So go ahead and take a look at the top of your handout. You can read the description up there. How would you explain this chart? So if you were given this chart on a test, such as the IELTS or something like the TOEFL, how would you explain it? Well, I'm going to give you some advice so you can maximize your score and you can explain charts and graphs in detail. First of all, what you don't want to do is you don't want to just speak randomly and choose different parts of the chart and just talk about them. Also, you don't want to just read the information in order. So, for example, I provide on the handout, for this chart, the number of cases of X disease was 100 in 1960, 200 in 1970, 575, 0 in 1990. So that's just reading it in order, and it really doesn't show deep thinking on your part. So what you do want to do is to have a game plan, have a plan when you are asked to explain this type of chart or a graph, especially in a test situation where you have limited time. First thing you want to do is to name the title. This should take about 5 seconds. Next thing you want to do is to explain how the information is organized and also what type of graph it is. And the third part is to summarize the main trends. So you should look for the big change or biggest changes in the chart or graph and make sure that you explain them. If you have time, you can even interpret what the numbers might mean. This shows a lot more critical thinking and deep thinking. So for instance, let's take a look at the example chart again. This is how I would do it. All right, let's start. First, the name of this line graph is Incidence of X Disease in Some Land. It's a line graph, and on the x-axis are a series of years from 1960 to 1995, and on the y-axis is the number of cases from 0 to 600. About the main trends, at first there was a gradual increase from 1960, then from 1968 the rate increased rapidly, leveling off at 500 cases from 1977 to 1983, finally dropping to 0 by 1990. So it means that this disease was common in the 70s and early 80s, but was basically eliminated by the year 1990. All right, so that's an example of that chart. Another thing that you want to do is to use a bit more sophisticated vocabulary. So if we take a look at the upward direction and the downward direction, we want to avoid using basic English like going up or getting bigger or something like that, or going down or getting smaller. So as you can see there's a set of verbs. Let's look at the upward direction. So for instance, rose, increased, climbed, boomed. And then you see a corresponding set of nouns. Also, you see vocabulary that you can use if something is going down, right? So fell, decline, decrease. I think out of this list, increase and decrease, you should definitely be able to use that. Those are key vocabulary words. If we look at the right, there is a series there. Level out, did not change. So that's if the line is sort of flat. The numbers are flat. Stayed constant. Maintain the same level. Those are all great expressions to use in that case. The next one's fluctuated, peak, plateaued. I'm going to show you on the next slide, so just stand by for that, okay? Note that stood at, that's when you want to point out a particular data point within a chart or a graph, okay? Other vocabulary that you should know, and this borrows from your math classes. So for instance, x-axis and y-axis, that's very important to explain that in a line graph. You can also say vertical line or horizontal line. X-axis, y-axis shows that you have a bit more sophisticated vocabulary. When you're explaining a table, You can talk about rows. Rows go side to side, and columns go up and down. All right. Other useful vocabulary. So, for instance, if information is going up and down, it's not consistent. It's inconsistent, rather. You can say that it's fluctuating. So, for example, humans' blood pressure tends to fluctuate throughout the day. If something peaks or there's the highest number, that's what we call a peak. Okay, so think of a mountain peak, top of the mountain. And then if something rises, if a number rises and then levels off and remains steady, we can say it plateaued. So those are here are some examples of using that this particular type of vocabulary. There are some special cases, especially these days with the COVID-19 outbreak and the falling of stock prices or oil prices. So you should know these as well because these are commonly used. All right, so if numbers are going down really rapidly, we can say nosedive, crash, collapse, and you can use these as verbs, right? For example, the stock market collapsed, the price of oil crashed. Okay. On the other side, these are some common ones: surge, skyrocket, and boom. Okay. Yeah. So boom really refers to something that rises rapidly. So, for instance, the case is surged. This case is skyrocketed. You can use these as verbs as well. Another thing to keep in mind is the type of graph or chart, and you should mention this when you explain when you have to explain one. Okay, so on your worksheet, I think this is on page 2 actually, go ahead and match the type to the description. And when you're ready, go ahead and unpause the video and we can check the answers. So pause now and complete the activity on page 2. All right, let's check your answer. So obviously that is a table. Here we have a pie chart, bar graph, and we have an infographic which combines data and graphic design. All right, now what I want you guys to do next is to try on your own, and you're going to do this via speaking. So take a look at this line graph here. Go ahead and pause the video, and what I want you guys to do is to explain this chart in 1 minute. Use the 3 steps. Okay, so pause now, and then when you unpause it, I will give you my sample answer. So the name of this line graph is Mario's weight in kilograms. It's a line graph, and on the x-axis are months from November to April, and on the y-axis is the amount of weight in kilograms from 0 to 60. So the main trends look like at the end of the year, Mario gains weight all the way up to peaking at 60 kilograms in January. After January, it rapidly decreased to 40 grams, so he lost 20 kilograms in February. Gradually, he gained the weight back, moving upwards from February to April. So probably what happened with Mario is that he ate too much over the holidays, winter holidays, and in January he made some kind of effort to lose weight, but he actually gained it back by April. Okay, that's a sample answer. Okay, let's try this one. So here, you guys look at the information, pause it, try to talk for about a minute, and then you can listen to my sample answer. So the name of this pie chart is Where Apple's Money Comes From by Product. It's a pie chart, and on the right are various Apple products, and then on the left are the percentages of Apple's profit. So the main trends of this pie chart show that Apple makes most of its money from the iPhone, over 50%. The next highest is the iPad, about 20%. Interestingly, even though Apple is a computer company, according to this chart, most of its profit comes from mobile devices. For instance, in terms of computers, it only makes about 11% of its profits from its Macintosh computer line. Okay, so just a reminder, when you're reading a chart, or explaining a chart, follow these 3 steps. Name the title, name the type of graph it is and how it's organized, and then explain the main trends, right? So what are the big changes? And again, if you have time, you can interpret the data to what you think it means. Okay, let's talk about homework. Please take a look at the 2 graphs, homework 1 and homework 2. Please write about these graphs in detail and submit it to Google Classroom. And here's the first one. It's a line graph, okay? And here's the second one. It's an infographic. So you have to do both, okay? And then for our Zoom discussion, here are 4 questions we will discuss. I'll have you discuss in pairs. So make sure that you are ready for the questions so you don't waste time by being silent, okay? That's it for today. See you next week on Zoom.